What's up, everybody? We got Coleman Ayers from Detail Miami
Sir.
in the dojo today. We're going to interview him, ask him some questions. Big time trainer who's, been all over the world. Our intro question for Coleman is, what is something 99% people don't know about you?
So I've been thinking about this one a lot over the last. No, I'm kidding. I would say, very matter of fact, my name is not actually Coleman, so my legal name is David, which there's a lot, and also I have the same name as my brother, who's also David. So that's kind of like a very weird matter of fact one. And then
Interesting.
another kind of weird one is that I honestly have watched like 5 movies in the last like 3 years, like fiction movies, and most of like my Netflix recently played is like weird nature documentaries and like travel stuff and just stuff that you would never expect. So yeah, those are two kind of interesting
Okay,
ones.
David, I did not really.
Yeah, but that's not what we're gonna do.
I did
I
not.
don't respond to that.
I did not expect that answer, and I guess that's why 99% of people.
Yeah.
So, this past year, you've traveled a lot through Europe. You've opened up your own gym. Recently, you're in South America. What's something that you've learned from like a training perspective, and then maybe one thing that you've kind of learned about yourself over this past year?
Yeah. So I think from a training perspective, the biggest thing is finding balance. So like beforehand, I would say before this year, it was almost too like science research based, where it's like whatever the research says, whatever science says is the optimal thing. And then now, not only getting more experience, but just the pendulum's always going back and forth. It's like there are certain things that as basketball trainers, coaches, we see they may not go perfectly with the research, but it's like we know it works. So now being able to kind of combine those two, this most standard example is like if you're going according to the research, you're only doing variable shooting. We know that there's a time and a place to do block practice, whatever. So just kind of that finding that balance for athletes, not only to get them the best results, but also to get the most buy-in and help them kind of accommodate to the training process. I think that's been the biggest thing for me, and that just comes from having worked with literally thousands of players this year around the world in the gym of all levels. So I think just finding balance in a ton of different things between experience and kind of the art of training and then the science of training. And then learning about myself or just more in general, I think I've realized how much. So I'll take it from this standpoint. It's like I've realized how much is out there just being around Australia, Europe, South America, like Curacao, random places, how much is out there, not only in terms of basketball, like seeing how enamored people are with basketball around the world, but also just in general, different cultures, different ways of life, different languages that you never knew existed. And there's just so much out there. And I think what that's helped me do is understand how many more things I can incorporate into not only my training, but my life. So like taking from different people's cultures and understanding that a lot of these things are really enjoyable to me. And I can go on and on about examples for that, but I think just understanding how big the world is, how much there is out there, and then kind of applying that to myself has been the biggest thing. And I guess the lesson that I'm trying to get to is like, there are a lot of things that I enjoy that I never really expected to. So I've just become a little bit more open-minded, I feel like, in the last year or so, especially having traveled to however many different countries.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you say about the research, because research is always a little bit behind, right? It takes time to complete research, but it's kind of like what you said. It's like there's an art to it, right? And basketball is just not only about skill acquisition or getting better at the skill. When we talk about block shooting, sometimes there's, when we saw Steph Curry make all those shots, like what was it, like 195, whatever, crazy number.
Crazy number.
And, he mentioned that was more like it was before a game, and he was just trying to get feel, and it's more of like it's confidence, it's a psychological thing. So there's a blend of understanding like when it applies and kind of when it doesn't apply. But and then also like there's the aspect of your athlete or your player has to believe in what you're doing too. So there's no intent behind the drill, or they're like what are we doing? This is so random.
Well, then the science said it works.
Yeah, and they don't have the buy-in. Then what is like? You're not getting the same benefit.
No, exactly. And I also think that research environments are so controlled compared to a chaotic environment that is basketball. So it's tough to really replicate that. And it's like, will we ever see full transfer, or be able to get full transfer from the research to the chaos that is basketball, a lifestyle of a basketball player and all that stuff. So there are disconnects, but just using it as a tool has always probably been using it as a tool, but not as everything.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other aspect of learning from others, I think just having spent time in China for a year or two, just learning from people who think differently, I think is really valuable, because it always helps you kind of go back and challenge your own fundamental principles of why you believe in something. Or when I see like a really good workout or something like that, and I'm always like curious, like, oh, why do they think that way? And hearing other people's perspective, and just like also like how people live differently in different countries. You were talking about when you were in South America, it was like total different vibe from Europe, and to have perspective of like, oh man, there's something more than Miami that it's pretty trippy. So
100%.
that, I mean, I'm really stoked that you got the opportunity to travel. That was like, it's cool to see that. You know, you're being a gym owner and then having the online platforms and training. How do you, we just touched about the research stuff, but how are you learning? What's your process for learning? How do you continue to grow when like so much of your time is spent being you're a businessman, like an entrepreneur, like that kind of stuff?
No, exactly. So especially since opening the gym roughly a year ago, it's been tougher to find time to read and just sit down and dive into something like a topic that I love for hours on end, because there's administrative work, there's dealing with employees and making sure that they're good, and there's just a lot of random stuff, painting walls that somebody messes up, and there's just
broken chairs.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's always something. So I think for me, it's been finding more efficient ways to do it, in the sense of like I used to just kind of dive into everything that I wanted to, and although I still wish I could do that, for me lately it's been finding a topic that I want to fully immerse myself in, and then making sure that I stay to that one topic, which is tough for me because I'm the type of person who's everywhere. Like if you go to my tabs on my computer, it's just like different topics. There's like a training topic, a business topic, like
weird nature videos.
Some weird, like me looking up a random country and just like figuring out its population, and just like in the middle of me training, whatever. I'm all over the place, but I've tried to stay more disciplined and like finding a book, some resources that I can really dive into, applying it, and then circling back and finding something else. And a lot of the times that gets interrupted by a 3-week stint in Australia where I'm like, I'm trying to read, but I can't. Like I'm bouncing around, I'm trying to network. I'm like, if I'm in Australia or Europe or South America, like I'm going to be trying to network and see that place.
Meet people.
Exactly.
Trying to...
So this year has definitely been a little bit slower for me in terms of like actually absorbing other resources. I've still been doing it, of course, but it's like, I've always asked myself, and as I'm traveling, like, am I going to look back in a year and be mad that I missed out on 50 pages of a book? Or am I going to embrace being in a new country and meeting people that could, come back to...
And you can only learn that stuff when you're there.
Exactly. I can read anywhere.
What are like 1 or 2 topics off the top of your head that like you want to go down the rabbit hole?
So I think, and I was going to mention this too, it's like I've kind of gotten to a point, and I've talked to a good amount of people about this year, where I feel like there's a certain foundation, at least in terms of skill acquisition, there's a certain foundation that you reach where it's like, it's a relatively new, like sports skill acquisition in general, but especially sports skill acquisition. It's a relatively new field compared to a lot of medical fields. And, so it's like you reach a certain point where you're like, I have to find really unique things to dive into here while I wait for like the rest of the research to just continue to come out. So I'm still like, I'm always tapped into different podcasts, Rob Gray, like rereading books, making sure to dive into new textbooks, stuff like that. But that's kind of taking a back seat. And what I want to do is kind of expand out of the things that directly transfer to the court. Whereas like skill acquisition, it's what we do as trainers. Like we teach players skill. It's kind of like one of the fundamental things at least. And now it's like, all right, how can I dive into other things that upon first glance may not be related to those things or related to how we get a player better, but they will be. So, I mean, psychology's a big part of it, of the training process, but I do think I've kind of pushed that over to the side in lieu of like just diving into more skill acquisition and strength and conditioning stuff. So I think I do want to get into more of like not even sports psychology, but just understanding how people think and being able to read body language better, being able to talk to players in a way that's more conducive to their situation. And I mean, communication kind of falls in that as well. But I think I want to find a few specific topics under the umbrella of just overall human psychology that'll help me kind of understand my athletes better. Not even just athletes, but anyone I talk to. Humans better, exactly. Yeah. So I think one of those is just like body language and how to read people better. So that's kind of one that I've been focusing on, or I want to focus on. I've been trying to find resources for literally like the last couple of days. And then after that, I would say that's a tough one. Because I've really just been focusing on that one. I would say another one is making sure that, again, and kind of going back to what we talked about with like skill acquisition is a tool. It's not everything. Making sure that what I'm doing is, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. I want to understand how to read science better, if that makes sense. So like, instead of just blindly, and you know, we all learn it in school, like how to read research. And it's like 8 a.m. class in college where you're just like, all right, great. Like I know how to read the you know, different parts of a research paper, but I kind of want to circle back on that. So I'm not just reading a textbook. I'm like, oh, this, whatever this author says goes. I want to be able to then dive into the hyperlinks to the resources at the end, see these, and then think critically about them a little bit more. And I've always done that, but it's like I definitely feel like I'm leaving something on the table.
Well, it takes a lot of time.
It does.
It does. And to look through the research and see like, oh, they did this on 12-year-olds who are untrained.
Yeah, and then the author of the book is saying this is how you train athletes overall, and it's like,
or this protocol worked, and you're like, yeah, he's 13.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the 13-year-olds improved by this training method. It's like, well, the 13-year-olds would have improved by
looking
me telling them to pick up that thing of soap 50 times and squat it. Like, they're going to get better at anything. So
yeah, I mean, obviously there's always like a more intelligent way, but like you said, like as long as they're doing something relatively well thought out, like they're going to see some type of gains, whether it's full range, whether it's calisthenics, whatever.
Exactly.
Being so young, so how old are you right now?
23.
Every time I hear that, I'm like, my mind is like, yeah. You know, you started this probably what, 6 years ago? Like, what was your first Details first YouTube videos? What date?
2015, I want to say. So probably about 7 years ago.
7 years ago. I'm sure you had a lot of struggles in terms of, I don't want to say identity, but believing in yourself. And I think every trainer has certain things. Like for me, like a big thing is being Asian and like walking to a room, being the only Asian, like, are these guys going to respect me? Like that's always been like a thing that I've had to keep challenging and pushing myself 100%. To get over. I guess I'm curious to hear, you know, at 23, like what were some of those for you and how did you kind of overcome those things?
So, I mean, I think one of them was definitely just not having played college basketball or let alone pro basketball.
Right.
And that was a decision that, because I started this at 16, maybe 15, probably 16. I knew that this is what I want to do with my life. And because of that, I chose not to play college basketball. I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Why not chase it? And then like halfway through like my actual college experience, I was like, why didn't I play college basketball? Because it would have helped me get to where. But now I've kind of come around full circle and realized like, if I had played college basketball,
you might never had the YouTube channel.
I wouldn't be doing any of this.
Yeah.
Because that's all I would have been focused on. Like I'm a very tunnel vision based person and I would have been focused on my output on the court. So there was a time for sure. And it still creeps in at times when you're talking to parents or you're talking to a high level player and you're just kind of trying to justify yourself. Like, yeah, I didn't play college basketball because this. It's always like rushing to the because. When now I feel more comfortable just being like, yeah, I didn't play college basketball. I could have. I had opportunities to. I don't even need to mention that. That's just like something that I kind of shift in my mind. I'm like, yeah, I didn't play college. I've been training
Duke
since 16.
offered me, but
you won't see it online. It was just kind of an under the table
Coach K.
Yeah. No, but it's like I've found less reason to justify myself because I truly believe that the work that I've done and the amount of work that I've put in, more importantly, should speak for itself. And we had some interns at Detail this summer. And I think a lot of them were dealing with that. Like a lot of them were college age kids. And they would come up to me sometimes. I mean, we'd have conversations and be like, how do I do this? Like, how do I explain it? Like, I'm training athletes who are my age. They're college players. I'm not. What leverage do I have? Like, dude, you can get them better. If you train them 3 times and they see, you know, you give them a couple quick results, you build some buy-in, you talk to them, you build a relationship, you'll be fine. And this is probably the first summer that I could have had those conversations, because beforehand I was having those conversations with myself. And I think that's something that a lot of like training is becoming such a big industry now, that most people are, not most people, but a lot of people never played at college level.
Yeah.
And that's something that I want to continue to encourage young players to do, is like, if you know that you want to dive into, whether it's training, whether it's anything else within or outside of basketball, like, feel free to put basketball to the side. Like, I would argue that my job of doing what I love all day and then playing 1-on-1 or 5-on-5 with my buddies and with my athletes is probably more fun than what I would be doing playing internationally right now, theoretically, like at my age.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. Like, I feel like there's more paths, and again, this is something that I've started to see like in the last year, and this is another thing I've kind of learned about myself, is like, I made the right decision doing that, although there was a lot of doubt that went into it, you know, in the past 5 years, even when I wasn't playing college and I had to justify myself every time.
Yeah. And I mean, for those younger trainers, it's like, it's true. Like, you have to accept what's fact. You didn't play college basketball.
No, there's a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's a disadvantage. Like, you're short. You're really short. Or something. Whatever it is. Or my skin color. Like, those things we can no longer change. But it's all about kind of finding a way to bring value.
Exactly.
A lot of value to the guy. So if you aren't that good or you can't demonstrate, well, they're like, okay, how can I still get buy-in from this guy?
Right.
Let me watch a bunch of tape. Like, oh, he's got a bunch of YouTube stuff. Like, oh, let me pull up his analytics. Like, let me bring something that he may not have thought of and show my value that way.
Exactly.
Versus, I feel like trainers sometimes will put a lot of pressure on themselves. Like, oh, I got to be able to demo this stuff. Well, it's great if you can demo it, but if you can't teach it or explain or all the other stuff, of course, demoing is very important, right? Like, it's hard to get buy-in if you're like, oh, let's do this through the legs move, and you can't even do it. Then they'll be like, well, your theory of how to acquire skill doesn't seem like I want to buy in, because you don't know how to do it yourself. Of course, there's that aspect. So if you feel like that's a weakness, then of course, work on that. One thing I want to touch back about, like the learning process, is I think an important thing that you mentioned is like, there's research, but then there's also and science and podcasts and that kind of stuff, but then also learning from other people who are in the trenches, right? So there are people who don't know anything of anything of the research, but they've trained 10,000 basketball players in shooting, and they have discovered that this methodology is, you know, and maybe it is in line with the skill acquisition, maybe it's not, but like, it works. It works, and it helps them a lot. So I think it's really important to spend time reading, spend time listening to podcasts, but then also immersing or being in contact. Like, that's why you and I talk. That's why I talk with a bunch of other trainers, to pick their brains, because they're in their own ecosystem. So you got all your players in Miami. Some guys got their players in Massachusetts, Jersey, California, whatever. Across the world. Maybe they got 150 guys, and like, hey, this really works really well, 150 guys. Well, that's awesome, because I get to learn from that guy who's already shown that this is work with his 200 guys, and it took a 2-year experiment. Well, if I'm like, shoot, well, like, let me think about it critically. Why would that work? How did that work? Okay, maybe how can I start implementing that right away? But that's so much, we might never get that in research, because nobody would be interested in researching that topic or even writing about that topic.
Nobody's going to fund that study, because it's so specific to what.
So having the ability to, like, which is awesome, which is you get to go to like so many different gyms. You get to see so many different places. So I guess you're young and you've seen a lot of trainers come up, and obviously there's trainers older than you and maybe have been at it longer. But what do you feel like as skill development trainers, or whatever you want to call them, player development, where do you think we could really improve on as like an industry, or just, you being in so many gyms, where do you feel like not criticizing them, but maybe
Right.
like constructively, like where do you think we
100%.
can go to improve?
I think fundamentally it is number one, being willing to improve. I think a lot of trainers strictly out of ego, and we all fall into this, right? Like sometimes I will look at other trainers who have gotten thousands of players better, and this is more so like, last year, kind of before I've learned all this, but I still do it, of course, is like I'll look at them and just be like, nah, I'm not even gonna like think about trying that. But now I'm starting to realize like I'm trying to shift the culture of training, and if I'm closed off to what others are doing, how does that speak to my ultimate mission? So I think number one is just being willing to change and understanding that change is not shifting everything. Like it goes back to that pendulum or that balance. Like for me, if I'm implementing one of your techniques, one of somebody else's techniques, like it's not changing what I'm doing and it's not copying you. And you're not going to look at that because, not saying that a lot of trainers wouldn't look at that and hate on it, but like most reasonable coaches or trainers are not going to look at somebody using one of their methods and either say F you or either say, or
why didn't you tag me?
Exactly. Why didn't you tag me? Or he's copying me. It's like, no, it's dope. Like I got to have an impact on somebody else and therefore their players. And, that's just kind of how that web grows. So I think number one is just opening the mind to change. And then from there is just being able to implement some of these, I guess, some of the things I'm going to go into. It doesn't have to be anything drastic, like 10 minutes in a workout, 5 minutes in a workout, maybe a little change in how you communicate in the drill. And this can be, a lot of things I talk about, whether it's perception and action, like just implementing a little bit of perception in something, or maybe you're pretty, traditional skills coach. You do a lot more stuff without defense. Great. Again, you've probably gotten a lot of players better. What are we leaving on the table? Maybe you've gotten a lot of players better, but they could have gotten 2% better by implementing this. Maybe that's putting that into live play a little bit more at the end. So instead of doing an hour where you're just focusing on the technical stuff, do 50 minutes of it and then 10 minutes at the end where they kind of incorporate that perception. Maybe that's like internal versus external cues from like a communication standpoint, where like, you still feel like it helps an athlete for you to mention like snap your wrist and do some of this stuff. Maybe just come up with a few analogies or constraints, but also like external cues to use. Just a few. Like it doesn't have to be anything crazy. So again, I think I want to encourage trainers and coaches to not see these things as fighting words, but rather as tools that can be used here and there in the training. It's not a complete shift. It's not your way or my way or the highway. It's not, everything that I do, I want you to do. It's like, no, I want to give you guys tools. That's literally everything. And I think a lot of, again, from the skills coaches who have shown their dislike for myself and others, I think what they think of it is as like, they're trying to change everything about what I do.
You're just trying to be cute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're just trying to be creative. And I think that's another thing is I would encourage more coaches to step outside the box a little bit. And I think a lot of what I post is like the weird stuff. Like I posted about effing shooting in the dark the other day because I'm like, that could help depth perception, like kind of takes away depth perception. We have to use other visual input or sensory input to whatever. That's literally 0.01% of what I do.
Yeah, and it's an environment constraint.
Exactly, which is fair. I mean, I would argue that's a very reasonable tool. But I mean, again, I post like the weirder stuff because, and not even because that like does well on social media, but more so because I'm trying to create a culture where we're willing to step outside the box and not just do what we've been doing for years and years and years because it works, because it very well may work. But again, what are we leaving on the table? Again, it may just be 3% improvement, but that 3% may help your athlete get to another level. And just because you're able to kind of step outside the box and try new things.
Well, it's also hard to know if it worked too, because we don't know if it really worked or if it was the other stuff
games,
or the other stuff,
team practice,
that you were successful in spite of all the trash, well, not trash, but bad training you were doing. So that's an important thing to think about. But I just think in general, like even with the creative stuff, it's it's not about being creative for the sake of
100%.
creativity. You're still critically thinking about
Exactly.
why you want to do that.
Yes.
And I think that's okay as long as you think critically about it, you judge it,
Right.
you reflect on it, you have some principles behind it, and you try it. Like, you won't know.
Yeah.
Like,
unless you try
yeah,
it.
you could try it, and then I don't know. Like, that's why I always, like, for me, one of the ways I try to learn is every year. Like, you kind of talked about, like, you go deep down into something like that. Every year, I test something on my body.
Nice.
Like, so I don't know, like 2 years ago was ISOs. It was like,
I
was doing extreme ISOs all the time. I was heard from Joel Smith and Jay Schroeder and like the extreme ISOs. And I was like, this seems kind of crazy. So I'm going to try to get a 5-minute ISO.
Yeah. Did you?
They did.
You did?
5:15. Only on one.
Gotten like 145.
Only on one side though.
Nah, hey, we won't talk about that.
I never got to getting it on the other side, but yeah, but like because like in order for me to ask someone to go through it or put someone through it, like at least I need to try it, and then if it at a minimum did not do anything for me,
right,
I'm not gonna go implement that when I know like it didn't do anything for me. So I always try to like test it, and I'm sure you do it too. Like before, 100%. Like you do something creative or like super weird. Like you're like, oh, let me play around with this. Let me see how it feels. Like, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And like think critically about it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Which brings me to my next question is, what does a session look like at your gym in Miami? Details Miami.
Yes, sir.
Detail Miami. There's no S in it. What is a common training session like? And then a kid comes to you during the off season. It's like, hey, Coleman, like I got 5 months to get where I need to get. How are you thinking about this? So 1, what do sessions look like? 2, what is the progression or thought process towards someone who wants to work a little bit longer with you?
For a longer period of time.
I'm here for like 2 weeks. That's
exactly.
It's pretty hard.
Somebody who we can actually make progress with.
Yeah.
So typical training session, we go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday usually. Most athletes don't come to all of them. Practice, schedule, fatigue, all that. Mm-hmm. They'll typically come in, and this is for like our group training. We'll go an hour in the weight room, which ends up being just like 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. We either start late or just give them some time in between to chill, which is preferable, but sometimes Miami traffic, crazy, people show up late. Anyways, that is purposefully 45 minutes and an hour in the weight room, which I think brings up an interesting point because a lot of parents that come in are like, why are you killing my kid in the weight room first and then bringing him on the court where he's not going to get any better? So I literally have this conversation weekly with parents, and it's like, look, yes, we're going to get them stronger. We're going to get them be more robust athletes, but we're not killing them. The goal isn't a lot of the same goal as many other strength trainers who is just, you want to leave there feeling like crap. Like, we want you to feel primed up. Like, you may be a little bit tired, especially if we do one of those extreme ISOs at the end. Like, that's why we give you a few minutes in between. But I want you to feel primed up for the skill session. And I think that's something that is done purposefully. Like, I always debated, should we go skills first, strength first, strength first, skills first? And I think I came to the conclusion that if you go skills first, it's a lot more demanding because it's a lot of decision-making stuff. Central nervous system is kind of getting fried at the end of it. It's not always decision-making, but typically when we have done that, players will go to the weight room and clock out.
Yeah.
So I think that's purposeful. In the weight room, we'll typically just go with like more creative type of warm-up, something different every time, something novel just to get them going, partners, get them talking to each other, get them laughing. And we'll just get into, I try to be super efficient, like 2 supersets of like 3 different exercises typically. Are
you doing the programming?
Yeah.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah. So I program it. We do essentially like a month by month. So, October we have, it's funny. I could show you the program right now. It's like loaded change of direction. And then I just come up with that day with the exercises based on a bunch of exercises. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't want to do this. I want to work towards those adaptations, but I don't want to do the same thing because the kids are 15, 16 years old. I mean, they need variability in that training anyways, but more importantly, I don't want them to come in, oh, it's the 4th Monday of October. I know exactly what we're doing. Like, I want to keep it fresh for them. So I'll typically do that. Like, we'll have a couple different focuses for the month or for the week, different days. and just kind of working towards that. Typically we'll go with just some like tissue quality stuff at the end, ISOs, whatever. A lot of them complain about knee pain, which is fair. Train a lot. Anyways, getting into the skill stuff, which is I'm sure what most people want to hear anyways. I will typically go with 3 focuses for that day. And this isn't all the time, but to me it's easier to structure when, we have 10 different athletes and they're all different levels, they're all different ages, they're all different heights, they're from different places. It's like I've had people come to me because I asked, or most of the time I'll ask players at the beginning, like, what do you guys think you need to work on? Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you every single one of you guys needs to work on this or that, or this is the most important.
You don't have time to watch all their film. And
I don't like, and I could, but that would typically be if a player was training with me, like, one-on-one sessions.
Or he was like a higher level player.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if these are professional guys, yes, I'll probably do it. Higher stakes players. I love all my high school guys, but if you guys listen to this, sorry, I don't have the time to watch every single one of you guys' possessions. When you get in the NBA, yes. So to me, I want to hear their input, and what that does more than anything is forces them to think critically about it, because they know that I'm a fry their ass if they come in and they're like, shooting. I'm just like, all right, and even when they say stuff like that, I'm just like, what type of shooting? Shooting off the dribble. What type of shooting off the dribble? What qualities do you need to work on? So I'm getting them to think critically about these things, and that kind of leads me into, and a lot of the time I'll have predetermined things that I want to work on with them, whether that's things that I've been focusing on myself. Just like, what are different ways that we can work on shooting off the dribble? And that's fresh in my mind, so I want to work on that, which is selfish, but more so just like it's fresh in my mind, so I know that they're going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
But I at least want to ask them. A lot of the time I was big, all right, none of you guys said pick and roll. None of you guys. Oh, you said pick. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll work on pick and roll. So I'll structure it with 3 different things. They're usually pretty warmed up from the turf, from the weight room. So that's like we get straight into it. Again, I'll kind of structure it the same way, where it's a little bit more social at first, like partner stuff. And that's, again, just to kind of get them comfortable. High school athletes, very closed off a lot of the time. They come in, they're just like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm so low. I'm too cool for that. It's like, no, you're gonna talk to people. You're gonna compete. You're gonna collaborate. So do that. And then how I'll typically structure the actual 20-minute windows, usually, that we're targeting a skill is, or at least a lot of time I'll go with like a play, drill, play type of situation. So we'll play out of it. We'll give them a little bit of context, like some sort of small-sided game, live finishing, contested shooting. Then we'll attack certain qualities in a more traditional sense that, maybe they need to improve on. So if we go finishing with contact, like I'm noticing that they're creating contact and then they're not able to extend outside of their frame and finish. I'm like, all right, a lot of you guys aren't doing this well. And this is why I don't really pre-plan a lot of my workouts, because I want to be able to
see
exactly. So if I'm seeing a common trend, I'm like, all right, let's work on this. So then we'll just do kind of a traditional drill, getting them comfortable with this. Then we'll go back to it. They have context. They have, at least added some feel or some confidence to their toolbox. Try it again. Usually they get a little bit better at it. I have to add on some difficulty, some complexity. And that's why I kind of like that play, drill, play, because they get context, I get context, kind of works out. They get to do traditional and, contemporary, like perception, action, training stuff, live stuff. So I'd say about 66% of it is live stuff. And again, like now that we're getting into season, I'm not letting any of them really contest shots, and I'm not going full speed to the rim because I don't want them to get hurt. So I try to be smart with it for sure. But that's usually how I would structure it. And then at the end, I just kind of let them play. My big thing is like, parents may not like it, but I truly like finding ways for players to get unstructured play, because we've talked about it, like pickup games. It's usually where most players see the bulk of their results, or a bulk of their results.
1-on-1, 2-on-2.
Exactly. So I'll just be like, you guys make teams, last 10 minutes, 3-on-3, 1-on-1, 5-on-5. I'm literally just going to sit down and watch. And that's like fun for me, and it's also good because I get to see them in an unstructured environment. But I think the communication part of it comes into play as well, because they have to make their own teams. Like, kids don't go to the park these days. I sound like the old head right now, but they just don't. And they need that social component.
23-year-old old head.
Yeah, exactly. The 23-year-old old head. That's me. But that's typically how it goes.
Yeah, and one thing I was thinking about too, like a question I usually like to ask is if you were to write up the scouting report for the other team of how to guard you or what you're most uncomfortable with, what would it be? And usually most players can answer that question.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, dude,
That's a great way to put it.
I hate it when they push me left, or I hate it when they're super aggressive with me, or they trap me. Like I always struggle with that. Or like someone will say like, what I know a player who struggles to shoot when he's too open. So he only shoots well when someone's contesting. I
think about it way too much.
And it's very hard, but if he's wide open, I'm like, oh, don't shoot it. You're too open. Wait till that defender's coming and then shoot it.
That's literally me.
So, every person kind of has like their different type of quirks or different things, whether it's like technical issue or psychological thing. But I feel like most players should, it's the same thing. They should know the answer to that question. So, no, that's super.
I'm gonna start saying that because if you ask them, what do you need to work on, they're not going to know. But if you ask them that question, like, give me your scouting report, they'll probably know, and then reverse engineer that.
And even that, you can ask them last season,
right?
What was the hardest, game that you played against, and then they'll be like,
what did they do well?
Like, what do they do? And then because some kids, like, as you said, they're
just not very self-reflective. Was I as a kid? Probably not. Like, it's just.
But if you ask them that way, they'll be like, oh, I hate that team.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Obviously, like, you have a gym now, which at 23 is very impressive. You have a YouTube channel that's, I don't know, how many subs do you have on your YouTube channel?
350,000.
A very high functioning YouTube channel and a good social media following. Can you talk about maybe the lowest of lows during this entire journey? I know you're still relatively young and you still got a long. Oh, yeah. This is like the beginning for you. It sounds like when you started when you're 16.
Yeah.
So 16 to 23, that's still, you still have 7 years of time. What's like been the lowest of lows?
Yeah. No, I mean, so I think, well, first off, I'm blessed to have these as my lows because, a lot of people in my life have had significantly way low. So any of these
we're talking about
very relative low.
We're not talking about like
the lowest of lows.
Deaths or anything. Yes. I just mean from like from an entrepreneur trainer.
No, exactly. So I think I would say 2 points, whereas like, life always goes like this. I would say 2 points are probably the lower sides of that. Number one was like moving down to Miami from up here in DC area. I literally didn't know anyone in Miami, and I wanted to keep playing basketball. And if you grow up with one love that you're doing your entire childhood, whatever, and you're working towards a point where you're going to play college basketball and that's the only thing, and then in a snap of a finger, like, I chose not to play college basketball and chose to chase something that down the line I knew would pay off more, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was like, I should probably do this, but it's not what I want to do. So again, I had to move down to a brand new place, Miami. Not a bad place to be, for the first time. It's not like I'm moving to, middle of, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings with different states, but like Nebraska or Arkansas. But, I'm in Miami. So again, not the worst of the worst, but brand new place, almost a brand new craft, definitely a brand new lifestyle. Because I'm not a hooper anymore. I was still going to the gym, like working out like I was trying to hoop in college. I was with the program for a little bit, the University of Miami men's program. Didn't really like it there that much. Different story. So that kind of threw some loops in it as well. And mentally that kind of, threw some wrinkles in it. And things aren't going to take off crazy fast when you're in a new place without much of a support system, boots on the ground. And it was like, dang, did I just make this decision for no reason? Like, I'm a year and a half in and, kids aren't trusting me because I didn't play college. Like, I'm too young for this. That's when, that doubt that we talked about starts to creep in.
This is when you were 18 for college?
Yeah, 18, okay. Kind of going into 19, I would say. And I'm not the most outgoing social person, so I wasn't like having the typical college experience. Just like I was locked in, but it felt like nothing was really going for me. I was still posting content. Things were growing a little bit in that end, but it was just like, dang, like, did I make the right decision? Like, would I be better off playing at a D3 or D2 hooping right now? And, I didn't really have a choice. Like, what else can I do about that? Could I have transferred to a D3? Probably, but is that really the right decision? Anyways, was able to kind of push through that. That to me tested like the fact that I actually want to do this, because I know a lot of people would have folded on that and gotten a different job, transferred to another school if they wanted to go back playing, just found their way out of that. So to me, that was like, all right, bet, like this is what I want to do. I know for sure. Then kind of opening the gym process, I was super frustrated going into that process. I mean, that's kind of what stemmed the desire to open the gym. Is like, I'm always relying on other people's time. Like, I have to pay for gyms
Content,
and no kids show up. Yeah, it's like
outdoors.
I can't film much content. I'm outdoors. Like, I had professional players reach out, yo, let's get in the gym. I don't have one. Do you want to train outside, Mr. NBA player? No, like I'm not even going to ask him that. So
get 24-hour fitness.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go at 3 a.m. Trust me, no one will be there. So that frustration led me to opening up the gym. But I was fine with it because things were going decently well. Like, business was solid. But then the actual process of trying to find the gym was insane.
Yeah, it was like 20 locations.
Yeah, it was literally reached out to 20, making calls every day. No, we don't allow basketball gyms in here. No, too expensive. No, you're too young. I had that a couple times. Just fair. Like, what 22-year-old at the time is going to lease out a commercial space and open up a basketball gym? Like, I understand. But to me, it was times where, like, I was in this weird place where I was all in on it, but it just wasn't happening for, like, literally a year. And all of my energy, not all of it, but a good amount of my energy was going towards trying to find a space for that gym, trying to open up that gym. Like, literally everything I had was in that direction, and it just wasn't working. So, I mean, I would literally come back from, like, site visits where I'd be like, oh, this is a perfect space, and be like, yeah, it's not going to work. I would just come back. I would have a session that night, and I would just be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. And, thankfully I never canceled any sessions because of that, but I definitely wasn't fully present in those situations. And then that would kind of add on. I'd be like, damn, I'm letting all this kind of affect how I'm training if I can't even push through adversity in this way. So then just a bunch of thoughts. Thankfully, I mean, I'm a big believer that just like when you do devote your all to something, like even if it's not in the way that you expect, things will come back. Thankfully, I literally stopped the search. I said, all right, this isn't for me. I'm just going to, work out of the people's gyms, maybe switch locations after I graduate, whatever. Get an email, go in the next day to a new site, like literally 2 days after I stopped the search. And I mean, had to negotiate for a couple months, but it ended up working out. And obviously we opened up. So I think it was those two kind of downward portions. But again, those are things that tested me to the point where, like, I know now that I want to be a gym owner and I want to make that work, and I'm going to make that work because, like, those were tests. In my mind, I kind of passed those tests. And, you hear all that stuff. Adversity always tests you. I'm still young to the point where, like, I haven't been through years and years of adversity yet. But those are, like, the two things where it's like, I can see what people say when they say that, and it's not just a cliche. Like that truly tested me, and now I know for sure going forward that I have that sense of direction, and I've passed those tests.
If you had to, two final questions. If you had to give yourself some advice for your younger self, like if you only had like a few minutes to talk to your younger self, going through that everything that you just talked about with Miami, and think, what kind of words would you have said to your previous self to give him a little bit of
giddy up
to get through that? Or it doesn't even have to be related to that, but that's something I always reflect to myself. Sometimes if I'm journaling or just thinking or going on a walk, I'm like, man, if I had a chance, like my 17-year-old self or my 15 self warped up, like just like what appeared right next to me, and it was like 30 seconds and he's got to go back.
Yeah, exactly.
What would I say to myself? And I don't know why I like to do that, but
no, I mean, I do it a lot as well.
I'm curious as to what you would have told yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one thing is, like, I always believed when I was younger that being closed off was like a good thing. Like, I'm just locked into my room, like grinding, and it's like you need times like that in your life where you literally lock yourself in and you work on your craft, and that's how you truly make the biggest strides in terms of your craft. But I think, like, during that time where I was, 18, 19 in Miami by myself trying to grow a training business in a pretty saturated market with nobody that I knew, that's a time where instead of doing that, I could have been out and about and trying to meet people, trying to build friendships. And like I grew up with a really tight knit circle of friends, and I never really wanted to get outside of that. And I think that as I've started to get outside of that, I've not only made a lot of friends with really genuine good people, but opportunities have come because of that. So I think that just like stop thinking that it's so cool to like just lock yourself in and like no, like we're social beings, like in business, social thing. And then also I think the second thing, and we'll already touch on this, so it'll be short, is being okay with like don't let everyone else's perception affect which your life vision is. So like I was the only player on my team that didn't go D1 in high school, and my fear was like they're going to look at me and think of me as like, you know, the failure of the team. And that's why I wanted to play college basketball so bad, where, you know, I was literally at my high school yesterday and I was speaking to the kids that are on the team now. And the fact that I'm able to go back and do that, having been the worst player on that team, the only one that didn't play college, is cool. Cause it's like, I offer a different perspective to them. Yeah. And if I had, you know, been the average D3 player, I probably wouldn't be doing that versus
no YouTube channel.
Having chased my passion. So I would say those are the two things.
Cool. And then who's your favorite player to watch? You could say college, NBA, whatever.
It's got to be Steph.
And
Basic
why?
answer, but just pushing boundaries. Like there's always, and there are a couple players like this, but I think the amount of like wow factor is just insane. And I think it stems from, and we've been talking about this for years now, just like you would never expect that guy to be potentially the best player in the league. And I do enjoy like the creativity, but also just ballsiness. Like he's not scared to take crazy shots, and
he has also the license to take.
He does, exactly, which is cool how he's built that up. And I take that from like even my nerdy self takes that from like a business perspective. Like, you know, I could stay in my lane, but I could also work for a license to take crazier, unique shots. In other words, like do unique or novel things, innovative things. So it's just kind of his mindset is impressive. And I think also like dude will go 1 for 10 one game and then come out the next game and hit like 11 threes.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's just no like clear up and down in his game. It's just like very locked in. So I think I like dissecting his mindset as well. And then just not on the nerdy side, just dude's really good.
And
for years.
Well, it's he does stuff that no one's been able to do, and so like you said, the boundary pushing is fascinating, and it's almost like he's pushing himself to do push the boundaries instead of he's
nobody else is
he's competing himself with the difficulty of his shots and and what he can do finishing wise, but also it's crazy to watch his the other thing I like about is watching his warm-ups because you know when anyone wants to talk about variability, it's you just watch Steph's warm-up, the different velocities he's shooting at, the different speeds, the different angles he's shooting at, different footwork he's doing. It's gotten to a point where he has to like come up with such
so crazy
to
create variability. But he does block shooting, so we should all do block shooting. And we talked
time
about
and place, time and place for everything,
game,
and time and place in a person's career. Obviously, if they've never shot before.
But, and then longevity. That's the last thing. Like ankle injuries, dude was counted out, and then like dude's still playing most of the season every year. So.
Yeah, what's crazy was Jeremy and him were teammates. When Jeremy was a rookie, and I remember a lot of those ankle injuries, and I was like, this guy's got glass ankles. But you know, you have not heard about Steph's ankles.
Knock on wood, hasn't had anything
in a long time. So, anyways, that's all I got for you today.
Yes,
appreciate you coming along. Appreciate your friendship. Feel like we've learned a lot from you as well, even though you're 23. Just messing, but
yes, sir.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate you welcoming me in the dojo, and as always,
he's lucky I didn't have the ice bath set up today.
Oh my gosh, it wouldn't have been as cold as last time, but
all right, man.
Crazy guy. Peace.
That's it for today.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was good.
I didn't do a clap intro.
Just do it right in front of the camera.